The other side of Scottish culture is really the modern art, the modern culture, the modern architecture, the modern engineering that starts also in the 18th century, with the development of Glasgow, with the development of the new town in Edinburgh, and the development of Edinburgh as a modern city. Here you have a view of Edinburgh from Calton Hill, showing precisely the new town. So the modernist, neoclassical side of the city that was built in the 18th century and then developed in the 19th century. In the 19th century, Scotland became the place of education, the place of work and industry. We have a vast development of Glasgow and Edinburgh as industrial cities. So here we have the tenements, both for the working class and for the middle class uh, dwellers. We have one of the great late Victorian achievements of engineering, that is the Forth Railway Bridge, which still looks very modern and very imposing and was built in 1890. We have the development of Aberdeen, the so-called granite city of Aberdeen. So the again modern uh, but still historically inspired buildings, such as some university buildings in Aberdeen, built of granite stone. As far as art is concerned, painting is concerned, there are some things to note, and one of the names that you could remember, the cat assistant, is Thomas Feed, and he is a 19th century artist. And if you look at some of the works that I included here, he is interested in the daily lives of regular people or poor people. Sometimes the images of the country life are quite sunny. So they show the people who are poor, but nevertheless they are happy because they have their families, they have their human connections. Very often they show happy mothers with children or happy families living together. But another side of Thomas Feed's art is the remembrance of the darker sides of the Scottish history, and especially those Highland clearances. This is, for example, visible in his painting, The Last of the Clan. So the once proud Scotsman being forced to emigrate because, like many of the Scottish tenants, he was not able to pay the rent. And this darker side of Scottish reality is repeated time and time again in the work of Scottish painters. And if you watch the documentary about Scottish art, come here. You will find that Scottish artists, especially towards the end of the 19th century and in the beginning of the 20th century, they were very often inspired by European art. They would often be very experimental. You would have artists like William MacTaggart or James Guthrie doing what was fashionable on the continent. So, for example, if you look at the works of William MacTaggart, you will see the seascapes and landscapes in a very impressionistic style, Sometimes you need to focus to actually understand and notice what's depicted there. Actually, MacTaggart would also very often draw the viewer's attention to the emigration, not always voluntary emigration of the Scots, mostly to America. So you would see the ships that would carry off the emigrants from Scotland. And if you look at the works of James Guthrie, we don't have them in the Moodle presentation, but they focus quite visibly in the documentary. He was inspired by another type of French art, which was social realism. So it's again the daily life of common people, of the country folk, but not idealized, not sugar-coated. Especially the lives of farmers and farmers' children. There's a very famous painting by Guthrie showing a little girl working in the field of cabbage, or another little girl with some geese. So she's actually pasturing the geese. So the working children who are shown with realism and dignity, but without the sugar coating. And also, if you look at the 20th century, you have quite a lot of experimental art, the art which is fully modern, like the work of the so-called Glasgow colorists. You have some examples by Francis Cadell from the 1920s, showing again the landscapes of Scotland, mostly the island of Iona, which he liked very much, but in a modern way that was closer to the continental style of painting than the traditional way of showing the romantic view of Scotland. And the last part will be about one particular artist. He was a kind of all-around artist, a painter, an architect, a designer, who probably can be seen as the most Scottish of the artists of the turn of the 20th century, and definitely uh, possibly the only and definitely the best representative of the style which was otherwise unrepresented in British art, namely the Art Nouveau. So the artist I meant was Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and there are at least two good documentaries you can find about him precisely on YouTube. One is called Charles Rennie Mackintosh, A Modern Man, and another one which is very recent, was made in 2018, is Mackintosh, Glasgow's Neglected Genius. And you may have encountered this name because I guess 2 years ago there was a very tragic accident in Glasgow. It was a fire that almost completely destroyed one of the buildings that Mackintosh designed inside and out in Glasgow, namely the Glasgow School of Art from the turn of the 20th century. This was a beautiful building with very interesting decorations, and unfortunately it was very badly destroyed by the fire. I don't know. Possibly, I hope they are going to rebuild it, but it will be quite a long and costly process. You see some photographs in the Moodle presentation. There is a lot of visual material in the documentaries if you're interested. And Charles Rennie Mackintosh is a very Scottish artist indeed. As an architect, he was greatly inspired by the Scottish baronial style and also by the modernism, and also by the Art Nouveau or the Secession style. He was even invited, together with his wife, who was also an artist, to participate in a very important exhibition in Vienna, which launched the secession movement. So if you look at some of his realizations, like the interiors, because he was like an all-around artist, quite similar. You'll meet an English artist like that in the person of William Morris, slightly earlier in the 19th century. So a man who would be a designer, a painter. He would design textiles and furniture and entire interiors. Mackintosh was also an architect, so he would design entire buildings, such as a private residence, which is called Hill House. You have some illustrations here from the outside and the inside, and also Glasgow School of Art. Plus some other interiors and other things. He traveled quite a lot. He spent quite a lot of time in France, also painting and working there. Part of the reason why he and his wife decided to immigrate was that they were quite poor and they couldn't find work in Scotland. But nowadays, of course, he is reappreciated as the most Scottish modern artist. One of the documentaries is actually entitled The Modern Man, like the first modern man. And this is, as I said, something very, very typical for the Scottish artistic climate at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. So if you look especially at the interiors and the furniture and the paintings of Mackintosh and his circle, like his wife, for example, Margaret, they could be seen as very good representatives of the Art Nouveau style, with the stylized floral patterns, with the elongated, languid female forms, with all the fashionable things from Europe, from places like Prague and Vienna especially, that were not really getting popular in England because they were too foreign. For the Scots, there was no such thing as too foreign. They embraced foreign fashions, they traveled extensively. If you watch the documentary about Scottish art, you will see that ever since the 18th century, you have Scottish artists going to Rome, being successful in Italy, in France, being inspired and bringing some of the current fashions and artistic trends back to Scotland. So this is definitely Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and he is another name to remember, especially as a very unique artist in the history of British art. So that's it for this week. I'll give you all the links in the email. And next week we are back in England, and we'll talk about the Regency and about, among other things, apparently the only art form, artistic genre that was ever invented in Britain.